Great. So what's going on, everybody? It's Shammy D, and I'm here with my brother, Affad Shaikh. We go back, like back.
Yeah.
And since college days. And I've had the great fortune of being able to still stay in touch with him over the years. And we've been able to connect on multiple or various projects throughout the time post-graduation. And most recently, we had a discussion about bringing his knowledge to you all who are watching about marketing, because he is currently at Claremont College. No, am I saying that right?
Graduate university, but it's
Right.
part of
Okay.
the Claremont colleges. So
Yes. And getting his MBA, and in marketing is his focus. And he so graciously offered to share what he's been learning with everybody. And on top of that, he brought a team. And this is why my brother, like, I can't just, his generosity is always amazes me. And right now we have with us Jason, who graduate of Cal Poly Pomona, he just told me, but has or does digital marketing currently, right? And we're missing the third member of what I have affectionately labeled the Braintrust, Eric, and he's currently in a work meeting right now, and will hop on as soon as he can. And so this is going to be a fire, like I already know, and we haven't even started. This is about to be a fire webinar on marketing today. So if you're joining, I'm glad you're here. If you're joining on Facebook, I will pop by to see if you have questions. But if you have questions, put them up and we will do our best to address it. It's easier to bring your questions into Zoom, where I can see everything and we can bring it, and we can all see it and bring it up. But I'm so glad that you are here. Thank you for taking the time out to share your knowledge and wisdom, both of you.
Of course.
The stage is yours.
thanks. So I think, I want to try to keep it as informal as possible, but we got a little bit of structure here. We want to go over kind of just the fundamentals. So, I'm gonna use you as a feedback loop here. So I want to just start and ask you a very like simple question in terms of like your personal experience. Like, what do you think about marketing, and what would you say is the definition of marketing without Googling it or looking it up, just from your experience?
Yeah, so I have two answers for you. One is prior to me starting a coaching business, and then another one is after starting a coaching business, right? Prior to starting coaching business, I just thought marketing was a catch-all term to get information about you out there. I could never really understand what it was about or how it worked, or like, okay, you get the name out there, then what? So it was just this elusive, big concept that I could never solidify a proper definition to, short of like, just get the name out there. You got to market yourself.
Yeah.
How's it went?
Yeah. So it's like, it's very like catch-all, like you said, right? Incredibly like wide. If you ask like my parents about marketing, they're gonna tell you like, hey, it's like selling stuff, right? And then there's the pop culture view of marketing, which is like Mad Men, right?
Yes.
Like, the whole like Madison and New York and advertising, right? So, marketing is a very, very wide like dragnet of like business functions, you can call it. But that's what makes marketing such a unique place to be in and to do the work, right? Because marketing, when you get into a business mentality, is really, I guess you can call it functionless, right? Like you can be doing marketing and it's very technical, like social media analytics or digital like marketing, right? Or it could be very broad, where you're working on like a huge strategy for like a brand, or you're working on a strategy for the entire company, right? And so marketing really is something that touches a lot of different parts of business. And so I think when we bring it back down to our granular level as individuals, we kind of see marketing through the lens of promotion and advertising,
Yes.
right? We're trying to promote some sort of thing, either it's ourselves or our business, or we're promoting like a product, right? And it's advertising. How do you get out there and tell people what you're doing and what you have to offer, right? But unfortunately, like that's really a limiting view and perspective of marketing. Marketing is definitely a lot more than that. I'm gonna throw out like something that's really um, more fundamental in terms of like our conversation, but we need to work with definitions. So
Yes.
people have to understand like how is marketing defined. And so the formal definition of marketing is that it's the management process that identifies and anticipates and supplies customer requirements efficiently and profitably. That's a mouthful for me to read to you right now. You know, but I think, you know, if we break it down and make it digestible, the way I would interpret this is that, look, in marketing, we're trying to understand our customers, identify what their needs are, and then advise or work with a company, brand, product, whatever it might be, on understanding those needs and wants of the customer, right? So marketing really does rule like every aspect of our lives, right? Like literally like one way to look at marketing is that it tells us what to eat, when to eat it, sometimes even how to eat it, where to eat it, and then also like how to feel about the thing that we're eating, right? Like incredible. But this is marketing. And so another like layer to marketing is that when we as marketers are in this space, we have to understand the customer, right? So that means psychology. We have to understand your psychology. We have to understand the psychology of like the society that we live in, right? And we also have to understand behavior. Like how do people behave? What are they doing? What are they not doing, right? So if we're looking at this, then then one of the ways to like look at it is these like slogans, right? What's the most famous slogan that you can think of in terms of like a brand or a product?
Just do it came to mind
Yeah,
immediately. Yeah.
yeah, right. It's so catchy. You know exactly what company we're talking about. You know how to feel about that company. You know exactly like what you're getting from that company, right? And it's what? 3 words. Just do it, right? 3 words capture such a huge, vast like emotional landscape and psychological landscape of that company, right? So if we're talking about it on a level of creatives, you know, we play in this field, right? I'm a photographer, right? So I work with photographers. I love photography. It's something that I've formally like took classes for, right? So for me, like I understand the creative angle of photography, and I like the technical stuff. But the more I did it, the more I realized that as a creative, like I also have to understand the business part of photography. You know, if I didn't understand the business side of photography, then you know I'm not going to be successful if I wanted to be a commercial photographer.
Right.
And so as creatives, that's really the first choice we have, right? Is we
Yes.
need to decide what exactly are we in this creative space? Are we going to focus on being just like creatively focused and discard like the entire idea of like commercial like paper and worrying about like the business side of it, or do we want to fundamentally do this as a career where we can make a living, right? I kind of call this the Van Gogh paradox, right? Like you got to decide, are you going to be Van Gogh or are you going to be somebody that's more, I don't know, Shammy D, right? You've made a decision that you need to make a living off of this. You
Yeah.
just focus on the creative part. And this is not a good or bad choice. But the thing with marketing is that you have to be intentional
Yes.
and you have to understand fundamentally what your decision implies. And that's what's important.
Yeah. So my whole part of the reason of putting this whole series together is to really allow DJs to see the back end of how to make your business work. And the struggle that I had and the struggle that I see, you know, also doing music, not just DJing, but like producing and have my own music out. It doesn't matter how good your work is if nobody hears about it. And I feel the mistake that a lot of DJs make for a good portion of their career until they start realizing like, oh no, there's a second component of this that I'm missing, is that the business side of things matters. Your talent alone won't get you where you want to go, unless it so happens that an A&R or someone who works on the business scouts you, sees you, signs you, and then gives you the machine to push your career forward. But that's like, it's the equivalent of having somebody get into the NBA. Like, it's, the percentages are slim. So my whole approach to this is, and what I teach is how to be self-sufficient on the business side of things. Because when you understand that, you can sustain a living.
I mean, like they say in DJing, it's basically that one song, right? You create that, you produce that one song, and then after that, it's all good, right? You know, creatives have that mentality though. Like we get so focused in on our craft, whether it be photography or music or whatever it is, right? That we think that that will speak for itself, and it should, and it will. But you know, it's a competitive market. Like, you know I'm not going to be the next Ansel Adams, right? And he's such a great photographer. Everybody sees his work and knows like exactly who took that photograph, right? But the thing is that, you know, Ansel Adams was really good with like the business side of things too. He was incredibly great with business. And so, you know, I think what we have to understand, regardless of being creatives in this scape, in any type of business we're doing, right? You know, Drucker kind of said it best. He said that the aim of marketing is to know and understand the customer so well that the product or whatever service it is that we're trying to sell sells itself. Right? So that's kind of like the first fundamental of marketing after you understand how integrated marketing is. The decisions that you make from a business angle of your creative business, you know, they influence a lot of other components of your business, right? And that's kind of where marketing first starts. If we try to understand like what, you know, Jason and I as marketers do, right, for a living, we start with the customer. We have to research who the customer is, right? We have to understand the customer and their needs and their wants. You know, I think one of the biggest mistakes people in the creative world can make is to say that, you know, if I build it or if I create it, it's going to be, you know, successful in of itself.
The field of dreams mentality.
Yeah, and I'm not knocking that down. I think that's really important, and I think we need to carry that, whether we're creatives or not. We need that, but at the same time, you know, in my faith tradition, you know, one of the prophetic teachings is that you have to tie your camel. Like, you know, God's gonna protect you, but you got to also like be sensible, right? And in approaching creativity as a business, the sensibility part is really important. You gotta hone in on your craft. You gotta like really get good at what you're doing, right? Right. But at some point, you also need to make a conscious decision to really move forward and start understanding the business side of things too. And that's what that is something that I noticed that is really problematic when it comes to like the creative industry as a whole. Not all creative programs really have the business side of things. You know, if you go to community college, you might be forced to take a class or two that's designed for the business side of commercial art, I guess right? But the thing is that you really are running your business at the end of the day if you decide to do art commercially. And I highly recommend folks to take some just simple business classes like Marketing 101, or to find somebody that can really like help you with the business side of things. But if all of that's not there, you know, beginning to understand the fundamentals is really where it's at. I really highly recommend any creative that's out there not to get lost in the current like complications of marketing, right? Because if you don't understand the fundamentals of marketing, you're not going to get the benefit from digital marketing. You're going to get lost with like the metrics of SEO, right? Or your website or how to do social media. Like I said earlier, marketing is one of those things that touches every aspect of your business, and you need to approach it with a strategy and be intentional about it. You know, we were talking earlier about like how you got to understand the customer, right? So from a practical application of this is you got to look at the market that you're in and get a sense of what's out there, right? Just because like DJs are out there, right? And people want to listen to music at their events, doesn't necessarily mean that a DJ who wants to play just EDM is going to get all the gigs that they want in a market space where people just want to listen to country music.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like that's that at its fundamental level is understanding the market, the customer, right? What are the customer needs? That's kind of like where I would begin. I assume like in trying to make this more practical and actionable.
Totally. And on a fundamental level, something that I thought, and if we're thinking about what does the customer need, well, as a DJ, I provide good music, and the customer just wants to have a good time. They just want to party. So it feels so simplistic. But am I on the right track with
No,
this train of thought?
no. See, as from a marketing perspective, what you've only done is scratch the surface. You've only begun to make assumptions, right? So the research component of this really is that, okay, who enjoys music, right? Who wants to have a good time, right? And this is called segmentation. So in marketing, what we try to do is we segment the market, right? The worst thing a creative person can do is say that everybody likes music. Therefore, like I have a large market to go DJ at, right? Well, if you're coming from my faith-based community, there's an entire segment in my faith-based community that says that music is something that you don't listen to.
Right.
So you made a very huge assumption, and I've just made your assumption fall flat. Like
right.
You cannot sell your services to an entire segment of my community, right? So we need to drill it down. We gotta like take it from this like really like atmospheric level of like everybody likes music, everybody wants to go to parties and enjoy themselves, to like a more granular level, right? Okay, we know that like music is something that folks want and parties are going to be thrown, but what type of music am I willing to play? And this is where you need to kind of do some self-interrogation, right?
Yes.
You can't just simply cater to your market and do whatever the market tells you to, and then basically feel like you sold your soul. As a creative, that would be the worst thing for me to do. You know, early on when I started to get serious about photography, I was doing it because I was like, okay, I can make some money on the side, and photography is so expensive. You know, this is going to help me like earn some cash in order to like buy some equipment. So I wanted to do that, but I realized as I was, you know, growing in that craft, that I had made a fundamentally wrong decision. It did not sit well with me. You know, commercial photography was not for me. That's not what I should be pursuing. Like, I am more of the Van Gogh when it comes to photography. I'd rather be poor and do what I really enjoy in terms of photography. And I don't want my paycheck to be dependent on my craft. Because that ties my craft up to my livelihood, right?
Yes.
And that was a really difficult like internal dialogue I had to have. And fundamentally, once I accepted it, I felt so much better. I felt like, okay, like I can do this. And up until like I admitted that to myself, going to like, you know, events and trying to do photography felt so bad. Like I just was like, I feel like a fake. Like, why am I here? Like, it's the same sort of stuff over and over again. Like, I can't even like try to change like a portrait and like make it work, because folks already have this Instagram mentality and they want that. Right? And if I can't deliver on that, like they're not gonna like me.
Totally.
You know, they're not gonna refer me or whatever. So, you know, that was an internal thing I had to have, and I had to align it with myself and be true to myself, right?
Absolutely. Can I jump in for a moment?
Yeah, of course.
There is a book It's called, I'm looking on my shelf, my bookshelf. It's called The Gift by Lewis
Yes.
Hyde. You read this?
Yeah.
Okay, so I read this. It's a thick, dense book, but essentially he distills the three ways that artists, it's about the, not confluence, but how art and commerce intersect and the problems that art and commerce intersecting builds up. And essentially he brings up two different stories. He talks about, oh, I'm blanking now. Not Van Gogh, because you just said it, but he was a writer. Shoot, I'll have to remember the name. I'll remember the name. It'll probably come to me later. But he brings up two different artists and their stories, their trajectories of how they created their work. But at the whole book is essentially about the idea of gift giving. The art that we are able to create is a gift, not from us, and that we should give it. But if you want to make a living, there's three ways to do it. One, you get sponsored by a family, a la Michelangelo and the Medici family, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Two, you work a 9 to 5, and that provides you the wherewithal to be able to sustain a living and give you the space to create art, or in our case, as we're talking, DJing, in your case, photography, right?
Mm-hmm.
The third way, and this is where the challenge lies, is being able to sell your art and make money. And this is where the problem comes in, right? Because then with your example, you would have had to do portraits in a very specific way that wasn't natural to your artistic vision.
Yep.
Therefore, you felt like you were selling yourself out, right?
Yeah.
And maybe for DJs, it might feel like, I don't want to play top 40 music. I want to do deep dubstep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And if I need to play Lizzo, I feel like I'd be selling my soul, which is fine.
Yeah.
But you know, and this was what I struggled with when I started DJing, it was underground hip hop. And so at the time there was this distinction between like, oh, underground, I don't play no jiggy music, you know, Puff, you know, fancy watches, Rolexes. Nah, I ain't doing that, son. Like, I'm playing my Most Def, I'm playing my Quali. But when I started DJing clubs, I was like, uh-oh, that ain't gonna work. That ain't gonna work. I love Most. He's my guy.
Yeah.
If you don't bang in the club, nobody wants to dance to you.
Yeah.
So it was a hard realization, and it took me years to get to a place where I can start spinning top 40 commercial music comfortably and not have a problem with it. But that was a very eye-opening moment for me in how it shifted the trajectory of my career, essentially.
Yeah. I mean, to me, I feel like having the experience that I've had, one of the things that I advise is to early on for folks that I'm talking to within the creative space is to have that conversation and be honest with yourself and accept your honesty. You know, if you do that early on, then it's going to save you a lot of problems, right? And you can be strategic then, right? So if you decide early on that, yes, commercial space is where I'm going to be in, and that I'm okay with that, I will do my art on the side, and, you know, I will do my craft as a side gig and make a living off of the commercial aspect of it. Then that means you can admit to yourself not only that aspect of it, but then you can also start working on the business side of it. Mm-hmm. Because to be successful, like I said, you need to start understanding business for yourself, or else you're going to do some really, really crazy mistakes. Now in my space, like in photography, one of the things that I notice a lot is that photographers will basically charge very small prices comparatively to what the market price is going at. And they'll do this thinking like, oh, okay, I'm going to build my business like this. But that's a really horrible upfront mistake to make.
Why?
Because, well, simply put, like one of the things you do is that you don't understand the market, right? You're simply saying that I'm going to create business, my own revenue stream, by undercutting other photographers in the market space. But what you also do inadvertently is that you lock yourself into that lower rate. Because if, for example, your initial marketing is word of mouth, and you're expecting that your strategy for promotion is going to be word of mouth, then the word of mouth that's going to go out is that, oh, this person was really cheap, right? And now all of a sudden, like, you're locked into a very low rate. People expect that. And when it comes down to it, that's the brand that you've now created.
Yeah.
Unintentionally.
Yeah.
Right? You've set yourself into a brand that says that I can do this photography for cheap.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, and then one thing that I want to add is yeah. So when like going back to those conversations that you have with yourself, um, once you have those conversations and realize what it is that you feel comfortable doing and what a product or brand you want to represent, then you can kind of find where you fit within the market and actually determine the price, and then just go straight to market with that price and set your brand up front.
Yeah. Well, question then to both of you. A lot of a common complaint that I hear, or complaint slash struggle in some cases, DJs will say, I got to deal with undercutting DJs. I want to set my rate at $1,000, but there's another DJ out there that'll do it for 200.
Yeah.
And they get the job. What do I do?
Yeah. So here is like where you start talking about like strategic marketing, right? We need to now like get into like the fundamentals of like how we go about making like a marketing plan, right? And how do we create the brand that we're talking about, right? So, we need to start setting some objectives, like what exactly it is that we're trying to do here, right? We need to also then like, again, all of this is really scientific in terms of an approach, right? We're rationalizing our internal conversations and creating a way to really think through step by step, right? Rather than keep everything in our head and then toss and turn at night and from anxiety that we're forgetting, something important and can't remember what the important thing is and losing sleep over it. What I'm offering is that when it comes to a marketing approach and the fundamentals of marketing, we're trying to rationalize this internal conversation and put it to paper and put it into a way of like checklisting almost. Like, all right, so I need to come up with a plan to deal with these undercutting issue, right? So from that perspective, it's setting an objective. What is the objective here? And this goes back to the first conversation that you have with yourself. What am I doing this for? Okay, once you figure that out, it's about, okay, what type of DJ do I want to be? Like, who am I in this landscape, right? And a good way to start creating an objective is to look at what other DJs are doing. Yeah. Right. So right off the bat, your objective might be, I don't want to be one of those undercutting DJs. Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. All right. Then you analyze your options. What does that mean? Right. Where do I take this? You kind of have to also go back to the market and look at who your customers are. Mm-hmm. Right. So who are these undercutting DJs like going and doing business with? Right. Am I really interested in doing business with the people that are willing to go to this undercutting DJ? Yeah. Right. And then we start getting into creating an action plan. But before we really create an action plan, we want to really hit something that's like critical to marketing. And people might have heard this because it's kind of come into pop culture, but it's called the 4 Ps of marketing. Right. So the 4 Ps, this is basically your price, your product, your price, the place, and this is like basically like, geographic. Well, let me just state them first. So price, product, price, place, promotion, right? To this, I would actually add another one, which is positioning. Okay. And positioning is going to go into branding, right? And so this is something that I think goes with the 4 Ps. But let's go back to like the fundamentals of the 4 Ps, right? So we have price. We talked about price already, right? The whole situation that we're kind of framing this conversation in right now is you have undercutting DJs, right? So you don't want to compete with those DJs, but then who is your market then? Mm-hmm. Right? If you decide to compete with those DJs, then you need to go to the next P, which is your pricing. If those DJs are undercutting you, the strategy that you have to really consider and think through is pricing, right? Why is it that market is going and hitting that up and hiring those undercutting DJs, right? What's the strategy that I'm going to have to do? Well, one thing right off the bat is I'm going to have to lower my price, right? That's a strategy. Mm-hmm. It might not be a palatable strategy. It might not be one that you want to do, but maybe if you did that, you have to then increase your volume, right? So you need to book more gigs with cheaper rates, right? So this is what I'm talking about in terms of like how marketing is like a catch-all for business, right? Because it affects your revenue stream.
Absolutely.
Decisions that you're making when you're trying to analyze the situation affect other parts of your business, right? So going and looking at pricing, why is that such a huge issue, right? The DJs that are probably undercutting are undercutting for the same reason that new photographers are undercutting photographers, right? And that's because they're new to the marketplace. They want to create their clientele, right? They want to be able to show experience and show that they got the skill set, you know, to work in this competitive market, right? So the question is that, you know, in this space, in this competitive space, how many of those undercutting DJs actually stick around?
Not a lot.
Right?
Yeah.
They don't make it. Why? It's because their pricing strategy basically was to get gigs without considering like the actual cost of executing those gigs, right? So photographers will charge like something like $20 an hour, right? For a shoot. You know, that's fine. $20 an hour, if that's what you want to do it. But let's think through real quick the mechanics of this. As a customer, I only see you working for 2 hours, right? When you come and do the shoot, that's all I see.
Yeah.
So when you charge me for 10 hours of work, that's going to make me go crazy because I didn't see you do the other 8 hours of work, right? To me, I only saw what you did. Therefore, I'm only paying you for that amount and I'm going to fight you for it, right? Because my mentality is this person only charges $20. They're cheap, right? And I'm going to get the cheapest deal I can possibly get, right? So I'm going to fight. So then if we take it back to the DJ perspective, right? The question is, do you really want to play for people like that? Right? Do you really want to the hassle of like arguing every time when you do an invoice, right? Do you really want to continuously be asked about a friends and family discount, right? Like, so this is what we're talking about in terms of the strategy. Like your pricing really does matter and you need to think through it. And within the cost of whatever creative like business you're doing, you need to consider the long range goal, right? Absolutely. So part of pricing that's really critical is how much money do you want to make in a year, right? So if your goal is to make $80,000, great. Is that $80,000 after you've taken care of all your personal needs or $80,000 flat, right? Because you might make $80,000, but after you pay rent, gas, and everything else, you only have like $500 in your bank account.
Right.
So it's critical to like really think through the pricing part because the pricing will then also affect the type of product you're doing, right? Like if you're playing for this type of market, then does that mean it leaves me focused on, I don't know, mariachi music or something like that, right? Like, am I just going and basically doing that type of music because that's the market, right? People willing to pay that might only want that type of music, right? What type of music do I want to play is the product aspect of it, I think, in this, right? The next part is the place. If I'm only charging that, undervalued like rate, right? Where does that leave me in terms of where I can actually do business? Right? Maybe all the gigs you're only going to get isn't going to be in a market space where people like that exist and they live, right? And your desire to go play in, I don't know, Beverly Hills or some other place might get squashed because all the gigs you're getting that are eating up your time are going to be with that clientele, right?
Right.
So now you no longer have the time to spend and do the type of advertising or promotion or networking or whatever you want for the Beverly Hills market.
Right. Because you're spending your time in a market that one, doesn't value your services, and two, is paying you less than what you feel you're worth or how you want to position yourself. And so by spending your time in that market, you're basically wasting valuable energy to shift yourself to the market that you want to go to.
Yeah. And so that goes into the promotion part,
Yes.
right? So that's the 4 Ps. And then if we add the position bit, the positioning simply is, look, I'm a cheap DJ and I will play anything and everything that you want me to play. And
Yeah.
I will show up with my equipment and put in my resources and time just to get a buck.
Yep.
That's your position, right?
Yep.
Um,
Hold on. I'm sorry. I just want to say for everybody watching, if you have questions about things that you're hearing right now, please put it in the chat. We are here to answer your questions today. Affad is, I don't have my sound effects ready, but Affad is dropping bombs. That's what I'd be doing if I had my sound effects ready to go. But let me tell y'all, this is all facts that he's dropping. I mean, I just hear DJ Cadillac, another one, another one. Like, that's all I'm hearing in my mind right now. And it's super valuable information. And this is the thing, when, if I'm touching on the internal monologue that you want to, or dialogue that you want to have with yourself about how you fit in, or what kind of DJ you want to be, what really excites you, where you want to go.
yeah.
It might seem like irrelevant, but it actually is super relevant to,
That's the brand. That's your brand
go.
identity.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that is the fundamental building block of what your brand identity is, right?
Yes.
Plain and simple. Like, you can't just create a generic brand. And I think, like, this is part of, like, the problem, is that people don't understand, like, how much, like, internal reflection, like, companies have to do. Like,
Yes.
you know, they're not paying, like, marketing folks and branding folks and product, like, managers and stuff like that, like, big bucks. Like, you know, a product manager could make anywhere from like 140,000 to like $220,000 a year. You know, and that's low level at a mid-level like company, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're making that amount of money because they are really spending a lot of time, you know, thinking through each part of this and really putting a lot of money into like market research. So here's an example, like Instagram. Do you remember when Instagram got their new logo and they changed their little app logo a few years ago?
Yeah, I remember.
It was like a big ordeal, right? Everybody hated it. Everybody despised it, right? They were clowning on it. You know, they had almost, I think, 1,200 mock-ups of that logo.
Wow.
And God knows how many iterations of the final logos that they came up with, right? So imagine like somebody spending their career basically going through and doing that, and then attaching a lot of money to do like focus groups. They're bringing in like a group of random strangers willing to make like, you know, a few $100s to sit down and have conversations about their feelings and their thoughts and their emotions to this one logo,
Mm-hmm.
right? Then they're doing like all of this research that is quantitative, where they send out surveys and ask people for feedback, right? Millions and millions of dollars are spent by brands and products to do this type of stuff. So when it comes to like, again, the granular level, us as individual creatives, that means our time. We need to do a lot of like introspective reflection.
Yes.
We need to do that. And the building block of a brand identity is sitting and making some really like gut-wrenching decisions. Like,
Absolutely.
you know, for you, like one of the things I've noticed is that, you know, I don't think if I hadn't talked to you for the past, I don't know, 13 years, 14 years,
right.
whatever period of time it's been, right?
Yeah.
Since we hung out. But like if I hadn't talked to you and all of a sudden I saw that you're doing these like
I'm sorry. It's been like close to 20.
20, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been long. But if I saw on Facebook like you doing like the rooftop sessions and raising money for the pantry, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like to me, I would have never skipped a heartbeat and thought like, oh, wait, what's going on here? Why is he doing something like that, right? Because that's part of who you are. That's your DNA, right? That's what we mean by when we're talking about brand identity, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of the best ways to create a brand identity is to start with those conversations first.
Yes, absolutely. I do a workshop that talks about the three main pillars, but like the 9 sections that develop basically the whole Spin to Six course that I teach. And in the first pillar, which is preparation, the second point to that is like, who are you? It's discovering your brand. Like, and part of the explanation is, are you trying to be an out there boundary pushing DJ like a Skrillex, or are you going to be like the crazy shape shifting kind of persona that Lady Gaga has, right? And I give those two examples just to show how strong their brands are and what it represents to people. And when you define that for yourself, it just makes your promotion, it makes your production that much more easier.
Yeah. And then, I mean, if we add to that, Arash, like, there's Taylor Swift. If you want to talk about a creative person who really is like business savvy and business oriented, she's like somebody you have to like respect. And you know, you can't say simply that, oh, she has people around her. No. Like, even if you have people around you, like, you can make some massive mistakes if you don't know the business. She understands the business enough that when the people around her speak, she knows like what that means and what that implies for her, right? And I would love to see creatives like that, because I think it's not that difficult to find yourself in that way. And here's the thing, like, creatives are already entrepreneurial. Like, we are already in that space. We might not be Silicon Valley like legit, but we're already like thinking like that, and we have to be thinking like that because that's the space that we occupy, right?
Absolutely.
So
I feel like in a lot of cases we have to teach ourselves to think that way.
Yes.
That's the thing.
Yeah. So the formalization is what's important, and I think like being able to have frameworks is critical.
Yes.
So great, like, I understand what's going on, but now I need to like formalize it, right? And it's kind of like the scientific process. Basically, like, how do I rationalize what I'm gut feeling right now, right? Like,
you get me excited. I'm sorry, because I tell everybody that I talk to, like, treat what you're doing as an experiment, right?
Yeah.
Try something, exactly. See how it works. Don't worry about whether or not it's going to be a detriment to your career. You try something, and then you see the data. Do people respond to it? Do people not? If they do, what worked? Why did it work? If they didn't, why didn't it work? Make your adjustment, iterate, and then try it again for the next one.
That's if I could drill down what we're talking about, that's basically it. Like, in marketing, that's what we're trying to do. The thing with marketing is that we don't want to like do it publicly, right? We kind of want to do it in the back end. And so we spend a lot of time on the back end part, kind of like fine tuning it. And then we go launch in public, right? But when you're earlier in your career, it's okay to do it publicly. It's actually a good thing because like you'll get immediate feedback, right? And that's a good thing, because then you know, like, okay, I'm gonna go back to my little Dear Diary and be like, all right, I tried this. This is what I expected, but you know what? I didn't get that. And why? Well, somebody told me this, right? And so what I would add to that is documentation.
Yes.
You gotta document, because like, good marketing isn't just something that we do and then get excited about and then move on and do another thing, right? Like, and we don't just jump into another campaign. And this is where metrics come in, right? Everybody's talking about metrics and stuff like that. This is why metrics are important, is because we're documenting what worked and what didn't work in order to fine tune the bigger project of our campaign, right? And so I'm hard pressed to tell folks, hey, focus on the metrics right now, when you don't really understand how the metrics are supposed to build or exist in your larger like identity as a creative person, or your brand as a business creative person, or even like what you're out there trying to do. Who are you selling it to? What exactly are you selling? How much are you selling it for? Where are you promoting it? Right. Like, it can't be that you say, like, again, going back to earlier, everybody listens to music. That's just too large of a market that you cannot serve.
Yeah.
And if you're only telling yourself that in order to feel good about like your decision to pursue, you know, DJing as a career, it's not enough.
No,
it's not enough. You really need to hone in. So in entrepreneurship, one of the things we talk about is beachhead markets, right?
Repeat that.
We talk about beachhead markets, or the low-lying fruits, right? we know that in an entrepreneurial setting, we want to launch into the market with our product, but if we don't have revenue coming in, we can't exist as a startup, right? No revenue, no existence, right? So we need to find those people in the market space who absolutely will buy our product and provide us with the necessary revenue stream that will support our ability to search out other markets and branch out and go out there and continue doing the work of building our product and selling it, right? So this is a beachhead market. This goes back to like D-Day, right? We send our troops, right, and they go to France and they're on the beach, and this is basically where we know we can establish a foothold, right? And that's what we're trying to do in an entrepreneurial like strategy, right? We're trying to find a market that will absolutely work for us. So in bringing it down to like our level of like, how can a creative take this theory and make sense of it? It would be understanding like, as a brand and as an individual, I am absolutely okay doing weddings, right? Like I will DJ weddings, and I will DJ as many weddings as I can get until I have, you know, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you know, security, comfort, whatever, right? Like once I have a financial like security, I'm going to start doing other things. I'm going to branch out and I'm going to try to experiment with the things that I enjoy the most, right? So I'm going to do weddings. I'll do them. That's fine. As a photographer, same thing. You can approach it that way. But you've already made the decision that this is a commercial, you know, lifestyle that you're going to pursue, right? Yes. Now, when it comes to market segmentation, this is what I'm talking about. We're taking it and saying everybody listens to music, right? And we're saying, now I'm going to focus in on who I'm willing to really sell my product to in the everybody market, right? People doing weddings, right? Great. Now we add another component to it, and segmentation. This is what segmentation is all about. You take the market and we group it, right? And as humans, we do this already. This is a natural thing we do, right? You know, those people are emo, those people are like goths, right? We're grouping already. Like, it's not that we're high school students and we go to high school and it's like, you know, everybody's like friends with everybody. No, we group, we self-group, and then we group the others, right? And this is what marketing is doing, is we're grouping and making sense of what's out there in the marketscape. And then we're starting to understand it. Okay, so we took everybody that listens to music and focused in on people who are doing weddings as being potential folks that are going to buy our services, right? All right. So the next component to this is something that is very simple, geographic, right? As a DJ living in, I don't know, Houston, are you gonna go play weddings out in Los Angeles or Miami or New York? Like, are you going to spend money up front to go do that, right? You're not, especially if you're just starting out. So what you're really doing here is saying, I can only play in Houston and like an hour radius around it. That's what I'm willing to do. So now your market has now become even more narrow. And this segment now can be said to anybody that listens to music who's holding a wedding in Houston, right? All right, great. We're getting somewhere now. We're being more realistic with how we do our marketing. So the question then is, you got to do research. Like, how do I find out where these weddings are being held? Who's the person that's gonna, you know, point us in the right direction? You know, is there a place where I should be going to on a regular basis in order to offer my services? Is there a Facebook group maybe of Houston wedding planners, right? So all of a sudden now, potentially, your market segmentation is even more narrow, right? Anybody that listens to music and that's having a wedding in Houston, who is a wedding planner. So now potentially your services aren't going to the general population. They're actually for wedding planners.
Yes.
Right? And now your customer is a wedding planner. that's so much easier to go and do promotion and advertising for, right? Than everybody that listens to music.
Affad just gave you a marketing plan, y'all. Please don't tell me I ain't doing nothing for the DJ community, because I bring about good people that know what they're talking about. I'm telling you. And what you just said, actually, I'm sorry, I got excited about it. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I'm juiced because it's when you really start breaking things down and digging into what marketing is about, this is what it is, right? I have a 4 pillars PDF to booking more gigs, and in it gives you the step-by-step, it gives you 4 steps. And the first one is identifying what you want to do. Like, what kind of gigs do you want to play for? Bars, weddings, clubs, events, corporate events. The second step is to identify who it is that you need to contact. The third step is to make your pitch. And the fourth step is to anticipate a bunch of no's, right? Just prepare yourself to hear no's, but you got to keep reaching out to the different people in your market, right? But what Affad is talking about is the steps, is kind of steps 1 and 2, but on a much more granular level. And I hope you are writing this down. And if not, I will have a replay for you. Just email me and I'd be more than happy to send it to you. And I believe, Affad, you have a worksheet about this, right?
Yeah, we'll definitely send out a worksheet where you can kind of walk yourself through what we are talking about and kind of start thinking about it. The thing about marketing, again, is that, like, we do this, we understand it, we see it in the space that we exist in. What you need simply is like the opportunity to understand the fundamental principles of marketing. And then the second thing is you really need to be able to challenge yourself to keep asking why. Like, you can't just leave yourself hanging at the anybody that listens to music answer. No. Like, if you're doing that, you're doing yourself a disservice, because that doesn't help you with the rest of what's important, right? And then connecting that to what you just said, Arash, with the pitch, right? You're supposed to sum up everything that is you in an elevator pitch. How do you distill everything that a human being is into an elevator pitch? That's not an easy task to do. And, you know, a lot of people are just like, oh, I'm fly with this, I can do this, right? And some people are. Don't get me wrong. Some people genetically are really great. They're charismatic. I don't believe that you need the genes in order to be able to do that.
No, you can learn these skills are learnable.
Yeah, it's learnable, just like it's learnable to understand the business side of things.
Yes.
You just need to make a conscious decision to do that.
That's it.
Yes. And if you're not willing to learn it, then you need to admit that you don't want to be a commercial artist. And stop living or trying to force yourself into the anxiety of wanting to do something that doesn't sit well with you.
Yeah, because it's hard. Marketing is not easy. If you have money, you can fast track a little bit because you can pay somebody to cycle through ideas, and they can write. You can talk to somebody like Affad, and I mean these marketers cost a lot of money, like on a monthly retainer, to go through these things and dig in the weeds with you. Yeah. But if you don't have money to do that, you have time.
Exactly.
And you have to spend a lot of time in getting all this together and figuring out what works and what doesn't for you to get to a certain point. So this is what, like, there's nothing, money isn't necessarily a bad thing. It affords you the opportunity to move through things a little quicker.
So here's my thing. No amount of money can be thrown at something if it's ill executed.
Yes. Thank you.
Right? Like,
good addendum.
I think people shouldn't get caught up in the idea that, well, I only wish I had money, right? Yeah. Because there's a lot of people who have money and they've squandered it and they've made nothing of what talent they had because they were so focused on the fact that, you know, money is going to buy me something.
Right.
So I don't want to like promote that, but at the same time, yeah, you can totally hire people to do stuff. Like,
yes,
I would not expect you to go out and become a CPA and so you could do your own accounting.
Right.
I would not expect you to become a lawyer so that way you can do your legal stuff, right? No, you want to go hire somebody that already does that.
Yes.
Because honestly, like, there's really no reason for you to go and do that unless you want to practice in that space eventually, right?
Absolutely.
Right?
I'm glad you brought up that the clarification, because what we have now, because of what's happening, is time. This is the most valuable asset that we've been kind of blessed with, if you see it that way. And so with what, Affad and Jason are talking about here are some steps to look at when it comes to marketing, and how you can start figuring out what the marketing plan would look like. But first, the fundamentals. You have to crawl before you walk.
Yeah. So, I mean, one other way to look at this is that if I'm going to go and pay somebody money to help me do this stuff, why am I paying them money to help me do the 101 type of stuff? Like, who am I and what type of music do I want to do? And like, if you come to me with all of those things answered, we're going to be able to do something way faster, right? But if you come to me where you don't have a clue about any of this stuff, then it's going to be really expensive. And also it's going to be very painful, because all of a sudden, like, you're sharing, like, I'm not a therapist, right? My job isn't to give you therapy, right? We don't work like that. What we do is we try to get to the point and figure out what the thing is. But if you need that, then, I'm providing you with therapy basically, and you're paying me to listen to you and then give you some very like gut-wrenching feedback that you might not want to have other people around for, right? At that point, it might be better to go to a therapist.
Right.
And it's kind of sort of the same thing. Like, you want to build yourself up to a certain point where getting help will be actually helpful.
Yes.
Right. And this is like just what you can start to do. And on the note of time, I want to just point out, like, Peter Drucker, he's somebody that I quote quite a bit. But like, one of the things he said about like our current situation, if we were to ask him, like, what can we do about like this pandemic, ordeal, he would say the greatest danger in times of turbulence is not the actual turbulent time that we're living in. It is to act with like yesterday's logic, right? So right now is probably a really good time to like allow yourself the opportunity to sit down and begin doing stuff like this.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
You might not be able to go and do the crafting and the gigs.
Sorry.
Right? But
I'm trying to find comments on here.
No problem. But this is something that you can start doing, right? And if there's folks around you, you can start getting feedback easily, right? You can start like surveying like your email list and asking that, hey, what type of music would you like to listen to? Things like this, you can start doing in trying to understand the market, and trying to understand how to do segmentation and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And this is a great time for that.
Yes. Yeah. So I want to summarize your points and then get to a couple questions. So the first thing you really want to do is understand the market, and know who you're serving, what you're serving, where you're serving it to, and you want to kind of set some objectives for yourself as you do this analysis. And then you had 5 P's to get you thinking in this way: the product, the price, the place, promotion, and positioning.
Yep. Yeah. And so that really starts to help build a strategy at the end, right? It helps to funnel, the answers that you've come up with into actionable things. This starts to help you understand, okay, who am I going to go try to sell this to, right? And okay, so the market currently, like, there's a question that somebody was asking about promotionals and like how back in the day, like it was possible to like go and give CDs, right? Well, it's true. You can't really do that nowadays. Like, people aren't working on CDs. So that's part of like understanding the market. Like, you have to do the research on the front end of stuff, which is the customer end. And you have to do the research on the back end of stuff. Like, how does this industry function? How does this market like do its business now, right? And that's what you need to actually, Google search, literally. Like, if you have a computer and a browser, Google is probably your best friend right now. You need to go out there, and there's a lot of great literature that's available. You don't have to spend money. I mean, prior to coming on, you know, like I know nothing about DJing. I know nothing about the fundamentals of the entertainment landscape, right? But I spent maybe 45 minutes to do a quick Google search, and I got entire market reports. You know, I know that DJs that are in the wedding landscape make the largest amount of revenue when it comes to DJing. They make up almost like 60% of the market for DJs earning, basically.
I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy. I didn't know that either, but yeah, that's like the largest market and the most profitable market. So DJs that are in that landscape make quite a bit of money, right? I was able to also find out what the average rate is for DJs in that market, right? What they charge, right? And this is just through real quick Google search, right? You don't need to pay for the, you know, specialized industry analysis and stuff that we as marketers would be looking for. That data is way better, right? But what I just told you about that was freely available is a good place to start, because now you can ask actually intelligent questions, right?
Yes. Yes.
If you're sitting on a webinar like this and it's a bunch of DJs that are coming from different perspectives, right? You can ask, hey, can you give me a ballpark about like what a DJ doing weddings can earn in a year, right? Now you know what is aspirational, you know, and what is like your starting point. And we can start building a plan.
Mm-hmm.
Like if your goal is to start earning $120,000, you're not going to make that overnight, right? But we can definitely come up with a plan. There's a strategy we can do, like maybe playing, you know, weddings for the South Asian community in Houston is not going to get you there. So we got to figure out another deal here, right? Maybe we need to connect you into the white rich community where the weddings are going, right? And that's where you got to go play.
Yeah.
Right.
Let's take accurate assessments of what's going on right now.
Yeah.
Absolutely. DJ Rec had I guess a question. I just recently moved to Indianapolis from Chicago. In Chicago, I stayed busy DJing every weekend. Here in Indianapolis, it's totally different. The music is different as well. It's like I have to start over with building my clientele. Okay. Also, there are many DJs that get a laptop, get Serato, and now they're DJing, undercutting everyone. People who don't see the value of a real DJ. One can read the crowd and have the right sound and lights. People see both DJs as the same. Their response is, you are just playing music. Not to mention that a real DJ can mix and blend songs, keep the dance floor packed. Oh, you saw the QA question about the
yeah, I saw that last one.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, this goes to the undercutting conversation we were having earlier, but if we build on that conversation at this point with everything that we've gone through, this is what we would talk about in terms of a pitch, right? Mm-hmm. Like you need to be able to sell yourself to customers, right? And how would you do that? Like here, you got to be able to clearly and succinctly explain why you are different and better, why the rate that you're charging is an acceptable rate. You know, that's part of like the marketing aspect of it. And to be able to do that, you have to be able to understand what you're offering. And this actually goes into a very different part of like marketing. I don't know if folks have heard of like customer experience management, right? Like this is really like the cutting edge of marketing right now. And so it's applicable to a situation that DJs find themselves in, or any like creative person, right? You got to be able to manage the experience, right? And so what DJ Rec is talking about is an experience, right? You have to understand who your competitors are. Who's your competitor, Arash? Like if I can ask you?
Yeah, my competitors in how I'm positioning myself would be they would be DJs like DJ Tendaji, Michelle Pesci, Dazzler, like they're DJs that are playing high level gigs, and are doing good work.
Yeah. What about iTunes or Spotify?
Musically, you mean?
No, I'm talking about in terms of like competitors for DJing.
There's not a lot in that regard, unless they are producer DJ. So I guess
No,
in
I'm
that.
just saying, like, in terms of, would your customers go to iTunes or go to Spotify?
Oh yeah, Spotify for sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. So like, that's the thing, like, you know, in that space, like, you have to consider that there is a possibility that the next substitute for what you're offering is nothing, right? Or potentially the next substitute for what a DJ is offering at that level of like the market is iTunes. You know, if it's all about just playing music, then why are you even bothering hiring somebody? Just create your own playlist.
Right.
Why do you need me to come and spin if it's just music and playing it? Use iTunes. That would be far cheaper for you, right? So we need to understand like how customers are thinking, and the only way we can do that is by understanding who our competitors are.
Yep.
And how what we have to offer is different, and that's called product differentiation, right? And here we want to try to position ourselves, and when we do positioning, we're able to respond to things like this and basically make a pitch to get people to purchase what we have to offer. Then going back to like customer experience, you know, if you really want to talk about like DJing, right? One of the things that I saw was that you know, for DJs that want to really make large money, it's not just about DJing, it's actually about events and being able to plan events. You have a full service event planning company. You're no longer a DJ, you actually do event planning, right? And you put on actual events, right? So that's about customer experience management. You completely offer a full suite of things so that the customer comes to you and knows that you're going to take care of everything, right? That's positioning. Now you're no longer competing with all these other DJs. Right. And DJing is a very competitive market. I mean, all those DJs that undercut, they're your competitors. And majority of them will not be in the market 2-3 years down the line, right? And that's because of how competitive the marketscape is.
Right.
Hey, Affad?
Yes.
Hey,
by the way, sorry, Eric. I just want to introduce you. Sorry for keeping you on hold for so long. You were behind my QA box. Eric is also part of the Braintrust. Thank you for joining.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for having me. Sorry for being late. I had a couple of things I had to handle. And I'm currently on my iPhone right now, so trying to deal with that stuff. But anyway, I just wanted to chime in really quick. Affad addressed the gentleman's question regarding, you know, hey, I just moved from Chicago to Indianapolis. The whole scene's different. Everything's different. And I don't want to offer a solution of some sort, but I think part of the pitch that Affad is kind of saying is maybe like, sure, these DJs are, I'm just giving an example of maybe undercutting and listening to different music, but like, what about, I guess, like I said, with the pitch would be like a promotion material. Hey, look, this is what my DJ parties look like. This is how these people are feeling. And so with that pitch comes, I guess, the promotional material, whether there's video footage of, your DJ sets or something like that. Like, yeah, like that's fine. But look at the energy here. Look at what I'm bringing in. And so, I mean, that's an example of what Affad's saying. And I just wanted to give maybe what that might look like.
No, totally. And I mean, that goes to the digital part of like marketing, right? Like before you can even do the digital part, you understand the fundamentals, right? And now like, okay, how do I address somebody like a customer like that? Who's asking questions? Well, seeing is believing. You want to know what differentiates me from the other DJs that you're talking about? Here you go. Visit my social media account, right? See what my parties look like. See what other people are saying on my like news feeds or my Facebook, right? And outside like reviews are really important, but testimonials are different. And this goes into a totally different like component of marketing. But my fundamental argument is that before you can even go into that space, let's get you on the fundamentals, right? Because if you know the type of identity that you have and the brand that you want to carry forward, then your social media strategy has to promote that, right? You have to be able to do that. So if all you're doing is wedding and then you want to branch out, that's great. But you need to keep your folks, your customers, aware that you still do weddings, right? right? And that means being able to share that and being able to do a strategy on social media to remind your customers, right? And then another part of it is like, once a wedding is over, like, what do you do? Like, do you just say goodbye, or do you expect a word of mouth reference, right? How can you sweeten the pot, right?
Yeah.
Like, if it's a word of mouth reference, how do you sweeten the pot to make sure that that customer who had you play their wedding tells other people about how great you are, right? And here, this is about strategy. Like, you know, it's not superficial, it's simply strategy, right? By remembering that you played this customer's wedding, what if a year from now you sent a anniversary card and said, hey, it was great playing at your wedding?
Another one, man. That's
right?
brilliant.
All of a sudden, if any of their friends are getting married, they're on, your DJing is on top of their mind. And one thing I can tell you from the research that I did was that, statistically speaking, people who attend weddings don't remember the bride, don't remember the groom, don't remember the food, they remember the music.
Yep. Facts.
Yeah. So, you know, this is what we're talking about in terms of marketing. And this speaks to the type of identity that you want to create, right?
Yep.
And so, like, for me, it's really about integrating things like this and not doing it haphazard. Because if you're doing it haphazard, then it's not going to make sense and people aren't going to understand what you're doing. And it's going to be like, wait, you were posting a crap load and all of a sudden, like, I haven't seen anything from you for the past year, right? Like, what happened? Like, where did you disappear to? And a lot of creatives have that, where they're super productive and they feel like they're getting feedback, blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden, like, things aren't going right and things, you know, they're not getting the type of response they want. And then, you know, they don't know what to do about that, right?
Right.
So part of the strategy is also being able to understand, like, okay, how do I adjust? If things aren't working, how do I adjust to that and keep moving forward with my strategy?
Absolutely. And it's a marketing is a vast subject topic. Yeah. It's and literally Affad and crew are just scratching the surface here, but this surface, it's the gateway to dive deeper into having an effective marketing strategy. And once all this work is at least started, once you've dug your hands in the ground and got a little dirty with it, then the coming up with a plan and a strategy only becomes that much more effective for you. And this feeds into the last part of my 9-piece structure in having a successful 6-figure business. It's being able to come up with a strategy that you can just wash, rinse, repeat.
Yeah.
You know what you're doing because your foundation is down. Right?
Yeah.
And part of the foundation not just includes your branding, but how you put your live shows together. Mm-hmm. What are your digital assets like? Yeah. Do you have promotional videos? In the one example I give in these business assessment workshops is I explain that if you don't have your assets together, you can lose work. Like, I lost a gig. It was between me and another DJ, and it was for a wedding. And the person who contacted me, I asked them, why did you go with the other person? I'm just curious. And they said, well, we got to see them, quote unquote, via video.
Yeah.
See how they worked. We didn't see anything of you. And I was like, oh, huge light bulb that went off for me.
Yeah.
I said, okay, I need to start documenting because this is important. To Eric's point as well, right? There's a visual of me that they can see and get down and be like, I like what Shammy's doing. I want him to DJ my wedding.
Yeah. I mean, if I could just build off of that, one of the things that we do with marketing is like the objectives, like I said earlier, right? So there's really 3 objectives that I think are kind of applicable right now in this conversation. Mm-hmm. We look at it from a new product objective, like we are introducing a new product, right? So then we're going to approach our conversation and strategy building around new product strategy, right? And so maybe that's a new DJ just starting up and wanting to get into the business, right? That's the example of a new product. Or you've already been doing it and now you want to try to introduce something new, right? That's different than the type of stuff that you've been doing. So that's new product. The other 2 are you've already been doing this and you want to increase your sales, right? And so if that's your objective, then we have a different like sort of game plan approach from a marketing perspective of how we're going to do this. And then the other last important one, I think, is like identifying new markets.
Mm-hmm.
You've been doing something and it's been working great, but you know what? Like, it's not necessarily the future, right? So those are kind of the objectives that we come from a marketing perspective, to kind of like what we're told. Like if I was working at a company as a marketing director, like upper management or part of the C-suite, the you know, the CEO, the CMO type of suite, like level of people, they'll be like, you know what, we need to come up with a new product marketing strategy, right? Or we need to come up with a new strategy for increasing our sales, or something we also call market share. We want to get more of the market now, right? Or we need to start identifying new markets because we don't think that the future of this product is going to be in this market anymore, right? So that's what they will tell me, and my job would be to come up with a strategy using the framework that we've talked about. You know, the logical framework of setting an objective, then going through the process of research and you know, testing our assumptions, and we do that within the product, price, place, and promotion framework. And all of that is to help us with positioning.
Yes.
So that's kind of like the step-by-step logical process of what marketing strategy it is executed and done. And that's just coming up with the strategy part.
Right.
And the actionable part is what comes afterwards. And this is where your digital marketing would come into play. Because your digital marketing will tell you how well you're doing all of that stuff.
Yes.
Right.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think a big piece of all of this is marketing. It's majority of it is like that research and testing phase. So, like Affad was saying, the actionable part comes after, and that's just such a tiny piece of this entire field, and just your strategy in general.
So, like the things that we see online or any kind of advertising that we see, there's been so much work put into, like you were saying
Before that, yeah.
Like for the logo, how many logos were designed, how much money was put into it, focus groups, etc., to come up with that one singular thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
I have a question I see in Facebook. I'm a live sax player and DJ combined, specializing in solo, duo, trio with tracks shows. My pricing is based on a couple of services combined. How can I be more effective in landing work without overpricing? So if undercutting is one thing, pricing yourself basically out of a gig is another concern, which I guess I'm catching here.
Possibly. Yeah. I mean, so that kind of hits on a couple of fundamentals here. So within pricing, we look at pricing models, right? We have, you know, a whole bunch of different pricing models that is fed from economics. So this is economic theory at this point. So again, when we break it to the granular level, the question is like, what type of artist are you, right? So when it comes to answering it in the premium, when it comes to answering in the pricing part of it, right? You can be a premium charge, right? Like that's your strategy basically, is to charge a premium for your services, right? Like you can be the DJ Khaled and play these like crazy parties where you're charging millions of dollars, right? That is a possible strategy. It's about, now that feeds back into your market, right? Like who exactly are you playing then? Like if you feel that you are overpriced, then that means the market that you're selling to doesn't have the income threshold, right? So you need to make two decisions at this point. Do I continue playing for this market, or do I search for another market where I can charge this amount of money? And where is that market, right? So if you want to continue playing for the market that you're continuing playing for, and you feel like you're overcharging, then yes, you are overcharging. Most likely that market cannot afford you, right? And you have to change your pricing strategy.
Yes.
Right? You can't charge premium prices.
Yeah.
However, if you feel that you do value yourself in terms of your creative output and the services you're providing at a premium price point, then you need to go do some research as to where that market exists. Who is that market willing to pay that price? What does that market look like? And then you will figure out like how to promote yourself there. And that's the place that you're going to do your business, right?
Makes sense to me. And it's put pricing in a completely different context now, because the pricing models that I talk about, I sent out an email about this last month, I believe. It was the three main pricing structures that DJs go through. And the beginning one is generally hourly rates. I will DJ $50 an hour, $100 an hour. The second one is like for weddings, I see this a lot. Like, here's a flat rate to do your ceremony or to do your reception, but we do add-ons on top of that.
Yeah.
So
these are all pricing strategies.
Yeah.
There's nothing, I mean, I don't want anyone to walk away feeling like there's a right or a wrong.
Right.
Yeah. This is very much a gray zone that I love existing in a gray zone because it's so much more creative to be in that zone, right? But the problem with what we're talking about and my approach to this is that you really need to know yourself. There has to be self-awareness. And like the only way things are right or wrong is because you understand yourself and what you're willing to do and not do. Yeah. Right. And then that fundamentally changes a perspective on everything. Right. Because you're no longer thinking about like your pricing in terms of like, oh, I priced this wrong. No, you know, you didn't. You were pricing it for the wrong market.
Exactly.
Right. And now you understand that you're willing to go to a market, but you're willing to deal with the possible implications of that. Failure, your plan might not work. Your income stream might go down initially, right? But you know fundamentally inside of you that you're okay with these two things because you've made an intentional decision to do this, right? And the thing is, it doesn't work out, that's fine. You can flip back and go back to how you want to do things that work, right? But you need to be okay with that. You got to be okay with wanting to take the risk. This is a matter of risk. As a creative, you're already in a risky market and doing something risky, right? But are you willing to take on more risk to pursue a strategy like this? So I don't think that your pricing is wrong. You know, it's more dealing with maybe, you know, the market that you're dealing with isn't right.
Yeah.
And now we got to look at what's the right market for that pricing scheme.
And what I like about what you're saying, Affad, is that it puts the power in the DJ's hands. I think like all this information is really empowering you if you're listening for you to do like doing that work and going through that, the time and energy and effort of that self-assessment, of that inner dialogue, and coming up with answers for yourself will benefit you long-term, because now you're empowering yourself to make the decisions of whether or not to take that risk, whether or not to stay in these markets. And it's critical.
And I mean, this is about a competitive market, right? You know, one DJ is as good as another DJ is the market value, right? So you have to empower yourself, I think. And that comes through understanding like what you're willing to do and not do and how you're going to do it and, you know, which direction you're going to take it in. And that alleviates some of the competition. You're no longer competing with like, if I was supposed to say like 100% of the market, right? You're now competing with maybe 60% of the market, right? Well, how do I limit that competition even more? Right? And that's what we're trying to do, is because like, you know, the next step would be like, how do I take myself out of the competitive market, period? Right? And it might seem impossible, but no, it's actually very possible. I mean, this is actually something in business that we call blue ocean strategy, right? Cirque du Soleil is a blue ocean strategy. Like, think about like one of the worst industries to do business in is like circus. Like nobody goes to circuses these days. Right? I mean, what's the last time you've been to a circus?
Cirque du Soleil.
Okay. Yeah, there you go. Nobody like goes to a circus anymore. And if they do, it's usually a really bad experience, right? But Cirque du Soleil turned the table and they said, we're not even competing with circuses anymore. and we're going to charge a premium for what we do, so that people show up wearing bow ties and like cocktail gowns, right? We took a circus that, you know, was out in like fairgrounds, and you're wearing boots and like, you know, flannel shirts, and made it into a, you know, a prime event. That's what blue ocean strategy is,
Yes.
right? Take yourself out of the competitive market and create a totally different product or experience or service where the only competition truly is you, right? And what I'm speaking to really is a form of that. What I'm saying is that when you do your introspective stuff, when you do your self-assessment and raise your self-awareness, you're now functioning from like your DNA, not the market space's DNA, right? And that's a little portion of what blue ocean strategy is all about.
Yeah, and the same guy had asked the question, will getting an agent be helpful? And I think your point, it's as helpful as the work that you put into it.
Yeah. I mean, I can't really speak to this market space, right? I have friends that do have agents. You know, they work in New York City in the media landscape. And for them, like, you know, getting an agent was amazing for their career. It was actually critical for their career. That was the only way that they could ensure that, you know, their terms were going to be met by folks that are going to be paying them, you know, a salary. But again, like, they probably already were in a situation that benefited getting an agent. And I can't speak generally about something like that.
Yeah, I can speak a little bit to it. So getting an agent is helpful to a certain degree. I've achieved my level of success with no agent whatsoever. No exclusive agent. I have an agent in the regard of when they just book like corporate events, and I didn't even seek them out. It was something that I ended up doing an event where they happened to be showcasing talent or providing the talent, and they liked what I did and brought me into their fold. That's how I've gotten the majority of the work that I get.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of DJs look to agents to have them do the booking for them, because the agent then has the relationships with all the venues. But even then, the agent has to have your branding down, has to have promotional materials down, has to know where you are trying to go in your career to assist you in getting to the right place. So this work still matters, and an agent can only enhance that as a DJ. But it's possible for you to make this happen sans agent, you know?
Yeah, I mean, one other thing I would say is that because this is a relationship situation, from a human psychology perspective and behavioral perspective, there are expectations that come into play.
Yeah.
Right. Are you expecting that this agent is going to basically help you get to the $200,000 salary range? Right. And are you saying that? Is it intentionally like put out there into the world and contextualized that this agent understands it? You know, because if this agent signs you on and you sign them on and your expectation stays in your head, maybe the agent isn't even capable of getting you that type of a salary.
Right.
And now you have a sour experience where it's like, well, this agent isn't doing me any good. Well, like, what was the expectation on the agent's part? Maybe he just expected that he's going to be able to get you for a dozen or so gigs, and that's as much as he's going to do. Right.
Yeah, there's a lot that goes into that on that side. And then even that, like, you want to maybe look at what is the roster that the agent has. And I hear this a lot with like big time agencies. If let's say CAA, if I get signed to CAA, cool. But if they have, that's exciting for me in regards to a career milestone. But if my agent also represents DJ Khaled, they're making more money from him. They're not looking at me.
Yeah, they're not going to take care of you.
No, not as much as they would Khaled, because Khaled is their moneymaker, right? If Khaled is the agent's like star client.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of pros and cons. I've heard stories of DJs signing to agencies and then getting out of the deal because it wasn't doing much for them. Yeah. So to your point, Affad, there's like so many variables in there. You want somebody gunning for you. And
I think, again, it goes back down to what I was drilling at, which is like, you got to know yourself.
Yeah.
Like, you got to accept the consequences of the decision you're doing without like being like, well, I didn't know. Right. Like, I think one flaw that is fatal is the I didn't know flaw.
Oof.
Like, the reason you didn't know is because you didn't spend time, right? Like, reflecting on it and possible outcomes of the decisions you're making.
Right.
Yeah, and I think
Go ahead.
I think the more clear you are up front, like Affad's saying, the easier these questions will get for you in the long term, because you'll know your kind of guiding principles and what you want to set a standard for, what your branding wants to be. Therefore, it'll make those questions easier down the road.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Ro asks, what about PR person?
I would say the same thing. Like, again, like, if you're coming to me to create your marketing, like, and you hire like me, Eric, and Jason to do your marketing plan for you, right? You might not even be in a place where that marketing is going to pay off for you, right? So you have to understand what place you have to be at where external help is going to be necessary for you. And the easiest way I can describe this is right up front, as a creative person going into this creative market space that's crazy competitive, would you hire an attorney to represent your legal needs? Or would you retain them, right, for your legal needs? No, you would pretty much ask them to draft up your business incorporation, right, if you decide to do that, and then you would pay a small fee for that, right? And then that's it. That's as much attorneying you're going to need at that point in your life. But maybe some part down the line, you're actually going to need an attorney to draft your contracts. You're going to need an attorney to do HR stuff, because now you're hiring other people, and contracting work and stuff like that. So you got to be strategic in your career decisions as well, right? Yes. When is it that I'm going to need like this service, and what is it that I'm going to get out of this? What are my expectations? And once you have that, the next thing I would recommend is to do informational interviews, right? Ask your network, hey, do you know any PR folks that you can introduce me to? Do you know any folks that are attorneys that you can introduce me to? Then go in and have like maybe 3 or 4 questions and be like, look, I just need 30 minutes of your time. These are 3 fundamental questions I need answered in order to help me make a decision about like getting services, right? And ask multiple people and listen to what they have to say and compare, contrast, weigh your options, understand how it fits in, and then make a decision if you need to make one. Again, like if you come to us, you might not even be in a situation where we can help you with a marketing plan. And it's kind of like the services you provide, right? Like you're not going to work with a DJ that just started playing house parties, right? You need them to be in a certain point where basically they're coming to you with experience and with enough like, financial know-how to be able to come to you and then benefit from what you have to offer.
Yeah.
And that's what's really important, is that whatever services you're getting, you need to be able to benefit from them. Just paying somebody to provide the service isn't going to necessarily help you.
Right. And I will turn people away, and I've done it. And even with people that have had the experience, just because I'm like, you might need a little more time, or your situation does not call for what's going on right now. You need to handle some other fundamental things before jumping on to a course like mine or working with me.
Yeah.
So it's not, these things matter. And also I'm all about self-advocacy, like doing this work of figuring out your business, figuring out yourself, figuring out your marketing. Yeah. What it does, it empowers you in another way, because when you start working with people, then you have an assessment of whether or not like the people you work with know what they're talking about. That's why I thought saying you have these questions in line when you want to talk to, let's say, PR people. And if you can tell right away whether people are BSing you or they're on their game. And the only way you'll know that is by doing the work, this kind of work on your own, because it empowers you to learn different aspects of the business. And you don't go away saying, well, it was a failure. I don't know about it. I didn't know, right? That's the worst thing you can do for yourself. No one is going to advocate for your career harder than you. So at the minimum,
your mom might.
Yeah, maybe moms. This is very true. But you have to definitely like push forward for yourself, and things will start happening. Also,
Yeah.
the other thing in doing this kind of work and pushing the business end for yourself, people start they want to jump on your train when they see the train is moving.
Mm-hmm.
So it has a bunch of benefits
Yep.
inherent in doing this kind of work. It takes time.
Yeah.
It takes
Yeah.
energy. It takes
Patience.
effort, right?
Yeah.
And you still have to DJ
Yep.
or work a 9 to 5, right? To
Mm-hmm.
supplement however you're doing it right now. But it's very possible to do. But again, it only empowers you. And that's what all this is about, right? The information that we're sharing here is designed to empower you to get your business moving. So you start learning these back end things that are not taught to us, right? Like you had to go to school for it, or you learn the hard way on the job. And I want you to get these things figured out now while there is this downtime. So you are better empowered once this pandemic wanes and is over and we get to a point where we can go out and have large gatherings again and DJ. Like you're going to come out on the other side way better prepared than most DJs because they're not doing this work.
Yeah, for sure.
I think one thing that creatives and even DJs have working on their side is grit and hard work. I mean, if it's anyone that can kind of dig into the weeds and learn all this stuff from the ground up, it's definitely creatives and people within this space.
Yeah. And I mean, you don't want to be afraid of this.
Mm-mm.
Don't be afraid, because like the business side can be daunting. Like I said earlier when we first started, like people look at marketing and they just think of it like big ass blob, and it's kind of like, then they see the metrics part of it, and it's like social media this and digital marketing that and SEOs, and have to learn like programming languages. No, like go back to the fundamentals. And the great thing is that you can do that. Like there's just so many opportunities right now because of the digital age that we live in, for folks to take like business 101 classes through like online programs like WebEx or Coursera. You can get the fundamentals and just the introductory sort of stuff online. There's so many opportunities for that, and seeking it out is simply a matter of self-motivation. And if your fear is that I'm not going to understand any of it, nobody's expecting you to be an MBA student right now in this moment, right? Like what's expected is that you actually begin to start understanding and seeing how business people think, right? You don't want to just be like somebody who's afraid of the business side of it. No, like start to understand like how I'm thinking and how I'm approaching this. And that way, when you do deal with people like me, you won't be like taken aback and be like, wait, what is this nonsense? Like, what is this person throwing at me? Right? You're going to be like Taylor Swift. She understands the business side of stuff. And when people talk to her about business, she gets it. Right. It isn't something that scares her. And that's, a thing that you can start, and you'll see the results of it. And if I could, like, with marketing strategy, really it's about customers. And if anyone understands customers, it's creative folks, because we get immediate feedback, from people and the market, whether they like our stuff or they don't like our stuff, right? We just now need to be more granular and start like digging deeper and be more specific about who are we going after. It can't be anybody that listens to music, right? It's like saying anybody that can see is going to want to buy my photograph, right? That's not the case. If that were the case, I'd be selling millions and millions and millions of copies of my photography, but I'm not, right? And that's like, that's how we start to begin to understand the market, and ask why. Like, why would somebody want to listen to my music? Why would they pay me for it? And then keep asking why until you really can't explain it anymore. And if I can, I'd pitch a book. Actually, it's Julia Cameron. I don't know if you've
The Artist's Way.
Yeah. This is a great moment in history to actually engage with her book. It's therapeutic. It will provide you with some therapy. It asks some really fundamental questions about like who you are as an artist. And I don't think it's limited to just artist. When I read that book, I wasn't necessarily on the path of art. I just simply was, that one right there. I really do recommend it because like if you're thinking, well, you know, this fool is talking about like introspective reflection, you know, how do I do it? Like I can write like 5 pages worth of like mumbo jumbo and not make sense of it. Yeah, true, very true. If you want a framework, I really recommend like Julia Cameron's book because you know, she wrote it for people who were going through like writer's block. But honestly, like for me, like it was really a good place to start engaging with like my internal like processes and what I do and think about as an artist and as a creative.
Mm-hmm.
And what she writes about, I actually do bring to the business space as well, because in a way, like the work that I do within like the business management aspect of it is creative.
Yeah.
You know, I have to be creative with like, how do I manage teams and how do I show up with my leadership, you know? And Julia Cameron, like she just covers so much ground in that book. I really do recommend it.
Yeah, it's a great book. Great book. So many gems. Like we are an hour 45 in, just to give you a sense of like the depth of how the width and depth of how marketing can go. And we're only talking about the basic principles here. I hope this was super informative for everybody. Affad is going to send me a worksheet for all of you.
Yeah.
So his email, if you have questions, he's graciously, here's his email address that, excuse me, you can email him. And you know, if you have a couple questions for him, let him know. He will send me that worksheet, and I'll be more than happy to send it out to you all. And you know, to the point of getting your hands dirty and learning by doing. So I have an upcoming show up challenge. I'm making a pitch here, so feel free to leave if you don't want to hear the pitch. But I have on April 27th, I'm starting a 14-week show up challenge course. And in it, every day for 14 days, I'm giving you a directive to accomplish. And you're going to accomplish these tasks every day. And it's designed for you to not just show up, because you'll be live streaming fairly often. But what it does is going to have you learn how marketing and promotion work, because you are actually doing the work. I'm only telling you what to do, but you are the one actually doing the work. And because you are doing that, you are going to start to get a sense of, oh, this is what I should do. Oh, this is why I do this. And I will give you a foundation to jump off of. But because you are showing up and executing, it's going to really help you get another sense of why marketing and promotions matter and how marketing and promotions work, even if it's on a basic level. So it'll start to demystify this whole thing and start bringing it into a more granular level for you, as we've been discussing. So it starts on April 27th. The sign up link, it's in the email that I had sent out, and I will put a link in the chat right now. If you happen to have more questions, feel free to let us know. Let me put this link in. It's a bit.ly link, 2KORJCR. Great. So, and I'm very excited to put this together because you will guaranteed, you will start learning, not just will you start learning things, but your career is going to start moving in a very specific way once you start doing this. So April 27th is the date. Check out that link for more information. And if there are no other questions, thank you, Affad. Thank you, Jason. And thank you, Eric. I know he had to hop off.
I think he got bumped off.
Oh, it's okay. We'll bring him back for the next one.
Yeah.
If also you have more questions, specific questions about your marketing, send them to me. And we've talked about possibly having the Braintrust to come back and dig into these details a little bit more now that we've discussed a bit of the fundamentals. So you go home, do the work, hit me with questions, and then we can organize a follow-up on this.
And the worksheet would be a great way to do that, is to kind of take that, start struggling with it. Your pitch actually for the show up challenge, like that is actually bread and butter right there. Like folks that are doing that, they would definitely start experiencing questions about like, hey, like, am I doing this segmentation right? Like, this is what I came up with. And you know, that is an actually experiential learning process right there.
Yes. So check out the link. do the worksheet. Once you get it, I will send it to you directly. And thank you, brothers, so much for your time and energy and your knowledge. I appreciate it. And
Loved it.
on behalf of everybody, thank you.
Hopefully it's helpful and informative and really gets folks to where they need to get to, because like for me, as a person that's in school, it's all theory, and being able to share it is like my greatest like pride, because now like all of a sudden the theory part of it is being an actual application, and it's going to people that can benefit from it, hopefully.
Absolutely. I think they will. And contact them if you have questions. Go through the worksheet and let them know what you think as well.
Awesome.
Cool.
All right, thanks.
Thank you, brother. We'll talk soon.
Yeah.
Bye.
Peace. Bye, Jay.
See ya.